Hello, I'm Nigel Griffiths. I'm at the Technical University, or TechU as we call it, in October 2020. It's a virtual conference, and in that conference I'm speaking about my new data gathering tool called njmon that will run on AIX and Linux on any platform. It gathers all that stats and we put it into the Influx database, and then we graph the data with Grafana. Now, Influx database is one of the popular 4 time series databases. The others are Prometheus, Splunk, and Elastic. I prefer InfluxDB because it takes less than 5 minutes to download it, install it, and get it running ready to put data in there. The others are a little bit more complicated. So maybe 5 minutes for InfluxDB. If we really tried hard, we'd probably do it in 30 seconds, but let's call that 5 minutes. And Grafana is much the same. A lot of those time series databases have their own graphing tools. Grafana is leading edge in ease of use, and it will actually connect to any of those time series databases. So it's a good common way of drawing your graphs. But anyway, in my lab, I'm teaching people how to use Grafana so that they can get sort of self-sustaining to get the data. Now with njmon, we supply lots of sample graphs, maybe 10 or 15 of them, but the point of Grafana is you can graph anything you want, and it takes literally a second or two to go and look at, oh, there's a new stat over here, we haven't got a graph, let's graph it and see what's going on, and then we can get the value from the data. They're not predefined dashboards or sets of graphs for you, and that's all you get. Down on the left in here is the actual slides we're using to drive you through the lab, and over on the right in here we actually have Grafana running live. We're actually using SkyTap to support our machine. I'm pouring the data in from some of my machines inside IBM, and they're going to connect to it and draw a whole load of different sorts of graph. So here we are, slide with the login in here. I've got some spare users. No, I'm not going to use admin. Let's just use a spare user I have in here, and the password. If you log in as the admin user, there's a whole bunch of extra things you get. I don't want to change my password. This is the standard screen. There's some updates of what's going on with Grafana over here. These are predefined graphs that are already added for the user, so they can go and look at those as some worked examples of more complex ones. But we want to actually start your first graph. So we go over here to the plus and we say create dashboard. Okay, so this is now a dashboard. It says, do you want to add a new panel? Well, if you have to have a panel or you're not going to graph, so we'll click on that. I'll slide down here. And we can see this is a graph. If you look in virtualization, it's the graph in here. There's lots of other sorts of graph. This is the default one. I need to select where am I getting the data from. Well, I have a data source defined. It's InfluxDB with njmon data in it. I'm just using both of those so I can remember those facts. You can organize yourself any way you like. Then we go in here and we need to select some basic information. First thing is called a measure. This is sort of an area of the data that we're collecting. So in here we have lots of things about the CPU. We'll scroll down here, some disks and logical partitions and networks and all sorts of things. If I go here and start typing and look for total, it brings up all the measures that have total in it, and we're going to look. So let's select the CPU logical totals in here. Down in here, these are the utilization numbers. You probably recognize them. User system idle wait in here, and it's going to put a key on the bottom for this stat, but it'll be a bit odd, so we can actually give it a nice sense by user percent, for example. If we now hit apply, there we are, we have a first graph. Now, this doesn't look so good, does it really? There's nothing in it. Now, this is something that happens quite a lot, especially when you're starting up. It's looking at the last 6 hours worth. Well, I haven't transferred the data yet. I'm not doing a live updating of the data in this scenario because the machine is on the internet and I've got all sorts of firewalls in between. So I'm hand installing the data. So we go up here and say the last 7 days. Way, we got some graphs in here from the last time I put the data in the machine. And we can see user percent is down in here, and if we can see the different things on different days. These are the days of the week, aren't they? If you want to zoom in, say those 2 days, we can just zoom in and see more information. Let me scroll down my notes. So it says in here, let's do a save operation. There's a little floppy disk. A lot of people these days don't even know what that thing looks like. But okay, we're going to save our dashboard, and I don't know, call it anything you like. This V1. Okay, save it. It's worth saving it because if we click over here and go and look at another dashboard, it will ask us do we want it saved, but otherwise it will throw it away for us. Let's keep saving our ones as we go so we don't have to do it all over again. Up the top in here we don't have a particularly nice name in here. We can click on the title bar in here and hit edit, or I can hover over it and type E on the keyboard and it gets us back to editing in here. We go to settings, we can see panel title, which is the name up in here. So in that we can type what we want. Let's call this CPU logical utilization. Okay. If we move the cursor out of that, it'll actually make the change live as we go. We'll do an apply. Save that. There we go. Now if we click on here, there's a whole bunch of other things in here. View will give us a big picture of this particular graph. If we had lots of graphs, we could sort of zoom in to that graph. Share lets us save the definition of this graph, so we can give it to somebody else. Explore and expect some more advanced options. This is nice. We can do a duplicate and get exactly the same graph and then change that to physical CPU utilization or something, but keep the basics much the same. Down in here we can remove it if it's all gone horribly wrong or we just don't like this one anymore, and we got some duplicate and copy. Okay, let's scroll down my notes again. Okay, so in here we have the user percentage, but it'd be nice to have all the other ones as well, wouldn't it? So let's go in here and edit. This little button in here, you can see there's like two things in here. This does a duplicate of this is a line on the graph in this case. So we can click on there and we get another one. So do we just have to change this one to be system, and we'll change the name here to system, and we'll do another copy. Come down in here and put in the weight, or wait for IO as it should be called, and then we can go down another one and we can change this to idle and idle. Okay, so now we have graphs, but we know that utilization numbers should always add up to 100%, and so these are just done by side sort of thing. So we really want this to be done stacked up on top of each other, and then we can see the 100%. So if we come out of here, you can see it in a bit more detail. We can actually resize these things very easily. Just drag the bottom corner and we can move them around the screen as well. I think we'll come to that a little bit later. Let me scroll down once more into the edit. Let's make some other changes. Pop these ones away. Down in here we have display. We can change things. If you want these stacked instead of all equally rated, we just click the stacked button there. There we go. It comes up to 100%. Then we could do things like we got lines at the moment. To switch them off we get nothing, of course. We can have bars. If we zoom into that, you can see the bars there. Go back to edit it. We could have a staircase. Oop, doesn't want to do that. There we are. We can make it into a staircase. Well, it's already a little bit like that anyway. We can add points to the graph. Okay, so we again zoom in, we get little points down the data. If we zoom in, we can see the sort of point. The dots can be useful sometimes they just get annoying. If you got switched on, this is how big the dots are. Maybe going down to 1 would actually make it simpler to look at. Switch those off for now, and we're stacked. That's all okay. We should have sort of nice looking graphs now. Another thing, it took me quite a long time to work out how to do this, how to change these lines. Well, it's all down in here. You can see there's a color in here. Let's put system as red. It's very little system time. Okay, wait for IO is blue and the rest is idle. Okay, so a little bit of wait for IO on top of the line there. Another one in here is that we know it's 100% and it's got 120 in case it goes high, but it doesn't know that utilization can never go over 100%. So we can actually teach it that. Okay, in here and axes, and say the maximum is, I would put 100 because sometimes it would cut like points in half, so I always put like 105 in here, and then the graph stretches out to 100. That looks a bit better. Scrolling up a bit further, I think we've got the gist of it in here. There's also some display options in here to give us this lovely blue color up in here instead of this one. Let's change that to green. Let's change that to orange, and idle to a nice restful blue. There we go. Now we can see the idle without it being too dominant on the page. Alright, so that's, if you like, our first graph done, and you can see how we can fiddle about with things and where to go to change the look and feel to exactly what you want to actually look in. If we drill in a bit more in here, you can see the green line and the red line and the idle, and the weight isn't there. With my artificially induced workloads, I'm not doing a lot of I/O. Okay, don't forget, change these things, version 2, so doesn't return, save, and so we can find it later on. The next one down in here is to do a pie chart. So let's make that a little bit smaller, and we'll just say add a panel. There it is. We go in here, down in here in virtualization, and we go for a pie chart. So it's slightly different in here. This is an extra sort of chart. You have to add a little plugin to get this working. It's quite simple to do. The administrator will do that for you, I hope. Okay, so let's go back to njmon data. The measurement is memory. There we go. The where we'll go for the same machine. We're hard coding this in a moment. There is a way of getting this defined up at the top of your screen, so you can select a particular server or virtual machine, and then all the graphs change to that. But we're hard coding it at the moment. In here it says use the real in use. So there's lots and lots of stats in here. You can see you scroll down. Rather than searching up and down, you just start typing the name of the one you want. Real in use, that will do. And we'll put in use. Then it says we want another one. Got to have another one, otherwise it's all green, isn't it? So we'll have to create another one down in here, and we'll do the real total. There we go. Now we have the proportions in use and in use. Yep, we've got to put the name. It's different, haven't we? Total. Now we'll move it somewhere else. So yeah, that's total, and that's the in use. And now we have a graph showing us those two values. I prefer it in the free. Oh yes, that's the point. That's not quite right. I need to fix up my notes in here. That should be real free. Okay, because they don't add up, do they? So real free. Okay, so free. Yeah, you want the 100% to add up, so they need the two types of in use and free. That works better. Okay, we can change the color. Can we do that in here? The in use as orange, and the orange done, and the free as blue. You'll notice here, if you click on one of these things, it only shows you that line or that part of the pie chart. Okay, I think we're done in here. No, we need to go up to settings and say memory use. Make a note to myself to change my notes in here. That should be free in here. Okay, now in the notes in here you can turn this into a donut chart. And who doesn't like donuts, right? By going into the options down in here. Won't do this for this one. Oh, let's do it. Okay, these will look better in a sort of square box. We're going to edit in here, and we go down to options. This is a pie chart, and we can change to donut. There we go. Now these are in 4K pages, which is a bit of a pain in the neck. So we have to do some maths. If we click on here, you can say get the last record. We don't want the average over the day, because if it's going up and down, we actually want to see what it is now in this sort of chart style. And then we have to divide it by the 4K, then divide it by 1,000 million, from bytes to gigabytes. And then we got the gigabytes shown on the pie chart as well. That's enough for us for our diagram use. Let's look at another way of doing a single chart. What do we do if we want a panel? We go to add panel. Okay, and we add a panel, and we go to virtualization, and we want stat in here. There's no data. Well, that's okay. We can fix that up now. So again, we're going to pick our data source. Then we're going to, in here, the notes are too small for me to read directly. So we've got kernel run queue. Okay, we can do that. So in here we pick up kernel data. The value is run queue. Okay, and we can call that run queue, and we can go settings, CPU run queue, and we've got a nice little graph in here. And this is the means. We want to switch that off, remove that, and then here we'll put in selectors last, the last number it's got available to us. And this is just looking at over a small amount of time that the other graphs are looking at, and I think we're done. Okay, so these look good if you have lots of little ones in a sort of great big panel. You can have a whole bunch of stats. It's good to make them all a sort of consistent size, and then it looks good. Make that a bit smaller, and perhaps we have that over here. Okay, nope, that doesn't look good. Keep it down here. Right, let's just show you how to duplicate this. Then we want to go in here and edit it. Let's have a look at a different value in here. Decrement interrupts, that's a famous number that some people love to bits. Just trying to look down in here. Something else we could look at. Let's look at the number of system calls being made per second. So there we are. System calls, and we'll change the title. Then we have another graph all done for us. So it's currently running at 581. I think we're collecting the data once a minute, so that'll be updated once a minute. Right, next is a simple text box. This can be used for communicating across a team. Oh, let's do a save. V3 save. Just in case we log out or disconnected, we know that's saved and we can get it back from our list. Okay, text box. We add a panel. Then we go to text over here. In here you can either type things, go to here, we can find some simple markup information, or we can do things like it says down in here. In here. If you just type things, a hash is large font, star gives us bullet points and things like that. In our little example, we've got some information down in here. Okay, so back to us in here. We don't put it in here. This is the example of the output. It's down in here that we put the details. So title in here. So notes to self. Check the backup on Monday. It didn't work, so let's do a correct my spelling. If we put a star in here and spell it right, then if we do an apply, we have a note. So we can leave little notes to people, or there's something odd about this number here. Why is the system call so low, or whatever? And we could say pass it on to the DevOps team to actually go and look at it. I'll scroll down. This is called the light theme. There's a dark theme if you prefer sleeping at desk. In here we go, preferences, save dashboard. Yes, we want to do that. V4. Down in here we have the default, which is set by the administrator, and we can switch it to dark mode. Save it. We go back to dark mode. Now we need to get back to those graphs. They should be in here, home. Here it is. And so we're now in dark mode. Now you may or may not like that, depending on how you feel. But there it is. It is available. Now there are some more advanced options. These do take some time to get working, and these are allowed for students to have a little practice by themselves. The first one is a host template. So this allows us, remember we hard coded this all to Silver 5 virtual machine. Well, this is the way we can actually get it to be dynamically changeable. So it is a little bit complicated, and we'll do that now. Okay, we're going to dashboard settings. This is cog up in here. All sorts of advanced things in here. This is how you save your model, and you can actually add it to grafana.com as a model for graphs that other people can use. But we're looking at variables at the moment, so there's no variables yet. Good, we'll add a variable. Now this has to be done fairly accurately. What I do is have an example that I just work through all the time. So host name can go in there. Query is good. Then the data source is our njmon data inside InfluxDB. Never on dashboard load, it will go and get a refresh of the data. In here we're going to add, you see I haven't got my examples up the side of here because I want to cut and paste them from that page. I want this, so show tag values where the key, let's get a new line in it, I think it is, where the key equals host and where OS equals AIX. This means that we'll only get hosts which are running AIX, because the AIX data and the Linux data are different, and so the measures and the actual values you get in those measures are different. So we can do that. We could have another one that says for Linux, but of course Linux are like Red Hat and SUSE and Ubuntu and blah blah blah. So you don't want to put all those in there. So what I actually do is say where OS is not AIX, and that will pick up all the Linux ones if you want to do the similar thing for the Linux. We want to do sort disable. No, we'll have alphabetic and standing. Okay, I typed this in again, this field in here by hand. I think we were picking up some control character. I did a cut and paste, but there we are. It now works. Instead of flashing up those red things, it's actually gone and looked into the value in the database, and it's found these are the 4 AIX virtual machines data that they actually find in the database. So we're now good to go. Let's just check there's anything else on here we want to set. No, that's it. Okay, and we go down here and we say add. That creates the new variable. If we go back to here, yep, here we go. So this now has blue or silver 3, 4 and 5. So this is the one we were looking at. Now when you change this thing, the data changes. No, it doesn't. Okay, now that's because this was hard coded. So if we go into here and edit this, and we change the, we haven't even got a where in here. Okay, so this should be now host equals this thing. Okay, now it's getting the data for silver 3. So we'll fill in these ones in here. Host 3. There's 4 lines on this page, so we'll do this for each one of them. And of course, normally you try and do this first time round. And now this is, let's go back. This data is now for Silver 3. If I change this one, you see the graphs change. Hey, look at that. Yep. Ooh. So Silver 4 is a lot busier than the other ones. Than my blue machine. Oh, that's my home machine. It's not got much going on there at all. We could go up here and say, look at the last 7 days. Yeah, so there's a little blips now and again on my database. Maybe that's running a backup or something, I don't know. Now we'd have to do the similar things in here, so that to get these to move, you'll see this is still hard-coded in, and this is hard-coded in. No, that should be, that's okay. And now when we change machines, yep, the amount of free and used space is changing, and the same with these. So we got there in the end. Oh, we forgot to put the hosts in there as well. So we're doing the average of all the machines up until now. That wasn't so good. So we do that, and syscalls. There we go. Host. Okay. Now when we change between hosts, all the numbers change. Great. Okay, we're good. We can see most of the memory is used on my home machine because it's been running for days and days and days. Okay, that's that part done. That's the host template it's called. So now we can change machines. We can actually export this, give it to somebody else. They import it. They have to specify their data source because their database name may not be the same. If it was my colleague, it would be, but if it was going to another company, it wouldn't be. And then it sorts everything else out for itself. Now there are some things we did like CPU totals. What happens if you have 5 CPUs one day and you change your virtual machine and you have 10 CPUs the next day? It's very difficult to draw a graph that changes dynamically. Another way, CPUs, disks are different on most machines. File systems are different. Your adapters, they'll be different as well. So the next part is going to look at how we do that. Right, let's look at that file systems. That's one that's has lots of things in there. We can graph them all at once. Okay, select our database source. In here, we want to select file systems. There we go. Where now we're going to put straight in here. Host equals all the hosts in the field. We want let's used percentage. There we are, used percent. We don't need that one. That's okay. Time series alias by. Now this is a little tricky bit that took me a while. You need to pick out of the data that is now looking at the actual names of the file systems. So there's a double square bracket, tag underscore, file system, and this is the actual one of the tags we use to tell it the names of the file systems. In here we don't want this, so we want to remove it. Okay, we'll add in there. We want a tag file system name. Oh, there it is. Tag file system name. So this is going to group the data for each file system together and then actually produce the output. The names aren't right in here. I just realised I've got an S in here. File system name. Yep, there it goes. It's worked out the names. So this is good. We'll apply that. There's a lot of different things on this graph. Typically this is used, isn't it? So again we can switch off that and get rid of the 120% okay over the top, but then we can see it. If we hover over these things, if we hover over a particular line, you'll see there that this line in bold, it's backup. At the top in here it's /proc file system. That's how it's full, isn't it? We have /temp and /tmp. They're down in here. If we just wanted to look at one of them, you couldn't find where the data is. We'll find /temp. We just click on it. It's drawing us that graph. Oh, right, very empty. If we click on the temp, it'll add do that one instead. So the temp is 18%. Root files. Oops, changing the thing. If we click on the name, we have the root file system. Well, it's going up and down a bit. Again, we could clamp that to 0, so we want 0 on these graphs, otherwise we're looking at a sawtooth that doesn't exist. But anyway, there's the gist of how to do that. That will work. Similar sort of things for disks and adapters. And if you want to look at all the individual CPUs, you can do that the same there. Right, well, they're the basics. And with that, you've got the idea of what to do. Set the title in here. Going in here, and you can start looking down on all these options. And one of the things we want to do is the minimum was 0, wasn't it? And the maximum was 105%, for example. And there's lots of other things down here, lots of things to play with and learn. But I found the best way to learn all these things is to actually go and look at somebody else's dashboard. Right, now let's save that as V final or something. Save it, and if we go in here and home, this is the list of the distributions that you've recently used. Alternatively, you can go in here and manage, and oh yeah, this user hasn't used many of them, but there's a list of them in here as well. The administrator can see all of them, but I wanted to go into njmon for AIX version 40. So let's have a quick look at Simple 6. So this has got no graphs last hour, not loaded. Okay, let's look at the last 2 days. So this is my Simple 6. This is the top 6 graphs that I think people actually want to have a look at. So for a power machine, we have the virtual CPU. This is the maximum amount of CPUs you can use. Then in yellow in here, this is what you've actually used. It allows 2, and you got 8.861, and the entitlement is how much it's guaranteed. So these are the more advanced features with a power server. But we've got the memory over here, CPU and memory, and the run queue, just creeping over 1 for our blue machine. Let's look at that 4. Let's add some more interesting data in there perhaps. Okay, file systems, and we have network bytes received. This is positive and negative in here. So at the top we have the receive data, and then below we have the transmit data. It's quite nice to see sometimes. No, it's not going to work in this case. But you can see data coming into your database and data going out in SQL statements, for example. You see the ratios of the input and the output. And we've got the disk busy over in here. This one's only got 1 disk. If we go back to blue, I think it's got a couple of disks. Yeah, we can see the different disks in here. All of them not terribly busy, apart from that little period there. It peaked up. Yep, 1 graph, and it's HDisk 1. Okay, so we can see how we can get around this. Now that's a Simple 6. That's the basics to get you going to see what is this virtual machine doing. Of course, let's go back to here, and we'll do this one over here. And whoa, there's lots more data in here. Lots of that didn't work. Okay, let's go back 7 days. Yeah, there we go. And so we got lots of information. These little 1-stat things up in here. The LPAR name, the serial number, the VP to E ratio, virtual processor to entitlement ratio. That's a good number. If that's too high, then you're not running very efficiently. The CPU is currently overclocking by 19%. The IBM Thought Police don't like me referring to it that way, but it's overclocking within the safe thermal envelope. At the moment, it's just under 4 gigahertz. That's where most of our Power 8 and 9 CPUs run out. You can see this is a Power 9. Lots of features of the kernel are switched on. We've got 4 disks and 2 networks. And then down in here we got some the regular stats, some of which we've already seen. Then we've got some fancier things. These are we have 0 to 7. This is SMT8 with 1 CPU, and we can see most of the work's being done on CPU 0, and these are logical. These are physical CPUs. We've got some nice rev counters, if you can work out what is the high number, and we can actually set the thresholds for going into the red. So if like a Porsche, Ferrari driver, you like these sorts of things. Memory in use, well, it's practically all of it. Well, that's normal for AIX actually. Got some pie charts in here. Got these nice little bar charts in here for the memory, what's actually been used for. Most of it's being used for, 83% of it is being used for user processes. File systems over in here. Then we got the various CPUs over time, what they're doing as opposed to the latest. Then we get popped down in here. We have network, block sizes, disks, busies, all sorts of things in here. These only work with the virtual I/O servers, looking at the shared Ethernet adapter in here. And there's another iceberg diagram in here for the virtual disks, but this isn't a VIO server, so it hasn't got that. So this sort of thing is you could look at and say, well, how does he do that? Here I've got my logo coming out. Well, how do I do that? We can edit that, and it's not shown in here. The collected by is up in here, and I've forgotten how I did it. Display. Oh, there we go. So we've actually put in the markup a link to where the logo is, and it's gone to the internet and sourced that image and pops it into our window for us. Okay. So now you know how to do that. Or you can look at this one. This is a clock. This is another plugin I have to add. But if you don't like that clock, you can go in here and change the background color to yellow. Ooh, no, that's not good. Blue. Yeah, that's much better. And apply that. We can have whatever we want in these things. Okay, that was a bit warts and all with most of my mistakes in. I'll probably cut out some of the really embarrassing ones where I have to rewind a little bit. But you get the idea. You've got graphs, you can decide what you want to see, how you want to see it, the colour and the style. And here's me actually sitting at my desk at home, in my home office, designing my latest Grafana graphs, looking at my njmon data. And there's the URL if you want to find the downloads for my data collector for AIX and Linux. I use Linux on Power, of course, but it works just as well on the Intels and the mainframes and the Raspberry Pis and all that sort of thing. Thank you very much for your time.